Good afternoon. My name is Evelyn Kimber. I'm with the Boston Vegetarian Society, and we are beyond thrilled to be here with Victoria and Diana for this event today. We are also AV, yeah. So grateful to be co-sponsoring this event with the Wellesley Free Library. Kathy and Elise have been wonderful to work with in planning this event, and our whole team who has been on this job since really in the fall, because originally it was scheduled for January. I feel so lucky to have been able to work with this team twice to have this event occur. But the Wellesley Free Library, Kathy and Elise, Diana Goldman, the creator of Beantown Kitchens. When I learned that someone who was a contributor to Victoria's cookbook was local and that she was willing to come and do a cooking demo and prep all these samples, what a blessing that was. Thank you, Diana. Even our AV person, Paul, I didn't know this until he arrived today, but he said that he is vegan, so we got a whole team going here. Laura, Mindy, and Beth, thank you for arriving early to help with the setup of the food. And we thank Barnes & Noble, our book supplier. They are here. As you noticed, they didn't quite get here at 1:30 for the early sales, but we will have book sales and signing after the program. And Kathy is very organized with a number system, so you've each got a number, and she'll be organizing the book sales afterwards by number. So I'll just say a couple of words about what's on the drawing board for the Boston Vegetarian Society. We're an all-volunteer nonprofit group. We've been around since 1987, and we offer free monthly speaker series, dinners, holiday events, cooking classes, speaker events, author events like today. Our biggest event of the year is the Boston Veg Food Fest. Our 23rd annual is coming up on Saturday and Sunday, October 21 and 22. It's the longest running veg festival in the country. And we have some surprises this year, which we haven't yet announced. So keep your eye on your emails, and I think you'll be getting some good news pretty soon. A few events that are on our immediate drawing board I wanted to share so you could watch out for them. Our speaker in June, Sunday, June 17th, will be Noah Gattel of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is a DC-based national organization that promotes preventive health through a vegan diet and other lifestyle measures. He'll be speaking on strategic nutrition research. Then on Saturday, June 30th, will be our annual summer picnic, and it'll be right next door in Natick at our wonderful board member Beverly's beautiful verdant backyard, which is right along the Charles River. There'll be kayaking and canoeing. Probably some drumming circles may break out, but just a lot of good conversation and loads of great vegan potluck food. In July, we are planning a program with about vegan children's literature with an author and a publisher of vegan children's books that promote compassion to animals and plant eating. And then in September, we're planning a program with a speaker on dietary strategies to protect your brain from neurodegeneration. So I have some free veg starter kits. Oh, I see the stack is gone. I'll replenish the supply. There's also posters for the festival. If you have a bulletin board, you can put it on, or at least to take with you to put on your own calendar. Kathy has asked me to just give you sort of the format of what the program will be this afternoon. So Victoria will speak, and then she'll do a brief Q&A. Diana will do the food demonstration. Samples will be distributed, and Diana and Victoria will then do a joint Q&A if there are additional questions, and the book sales will be there, and the signing will take place in here. So you buy them there, come over here for Victoria to sign. Having a chance to present Victoria Moran is just an absolute thrill. My friend Terry just came in today, and I've known Terry since the 80s, and I didn't know this. She said that she has an article by Victoria Moran that was in the Animals Agenda magazine back in the 80s that she laminated, saved. She works with children, and it's on, what is it? Children Are the Hope. And she said, what did you say? It made you swoon, and you still reread it and still have it. It gives her chills every time she reads it, Victoria. So this is the kind of effect that Victoria Moran has on people. She is a best-selling author of 12 books. She has been published in 30 different languages. She is the creator, founder, and leader of Main Street Vegan Academy that trains vegan lifestyle coaches, of which Diana is a graduate. And just an all-around wonderful person. I was nervous about riding out in the car with her here today. I picked her up at the train, but she made it so easy. She's just great. So we're so glad to have her here to share her experience, wisdom, and knowledge. And we present Victoria Moran.
Hey, everybody. Well, that totally goes back to Evelyn Kimber, who is a legend in the vegetarian and vegan world because she has kept at it. And this is one of those things, I think, especially when you're in a volunteer capacity and you're just tirelessly working and you're putting on events, which is a lot of work. I mean, when I do my academy, that's for 20 people, and I feel like I need to be sent to a resort for 2 weeks after each one. And then I think of all these years of the festival that Evelyn and her colleagues have been doing. I am in awe, so thank you, thank you. So yesterday, I left New York City to go to Providence, where I spoke yesterday, and then to come here today. So you got to have some reading material, right? So I go into the newsstand there at Penn Station, and I got this. Can y'all see? This is Muscle and Fitness. Don't know that anybody is a regular reader of that. It's the bodybuilding magazine. So I bought it and handed it to the clerk. And she looked at me, and she looked at him, and she got this look on her face that said so clearly, you keep this job long enough, and you'll see everything. But the reason that I am the proud owner of this particular issue of Muscle and Fitness is that this young man, Nirmai Delgado, is a vegan bodybuilder. He's actually a lifelong vegetarian. He's been a bodybuilder and a vegan for 3 years. He started them both at the same time. Because lots of times you'll hear, oh yeah, we have these athletes and they have these muscles, but come on, they built those muscles back when they were eating meat. No, not necessarily. So he's going to be on my radio show soon, and I figured I should read about him. So that was kind of fun. I'm going to pass around these sign-up sheets, and what this will get you is the recipes. They are in the Main Street Vegan Academy cookbook, but you can also have them separately sent to you via email, as well as a handout for this presentation. In the interest of full disclosure, it also means that you will be on Diana's list and my list, and if you decide that you don't really like us that much, you can either not sign or just quick unsubscribe, one click. We don't want to spam anybody, but it would be wonderful to have you as part of our networks and part of our extended family. So I was talking to somebody that I met here. Here's the woman I met in the bathroom. We were talking about family and stuff. Yes, and there you are in the front row. You'll get an A. And so I thought I would just start with a little background about what all this is about and a little family kind of story. So the background first, I started as a vegetarian in 1969. The world existed. We had cars and running water. And I had gotten interested in yoga. So I read all 3 books on yoga in the Kansas City, Missouri Public Library. I read them several times because there were only 3. And it said, if you want to be serious about yoga, you're going to be vegetarian. And so I started on this path way back then as a teenager. And I heard a few years later about veganism. And I thought, that's weird. It seemed so extreme and so difficult. Kind of like, have you ever heard of the breatharians? They're supposedly these people who live from the rays of the sun. And I always thought, I don't know if they exist or not, but even if they do, I don't want to be one. And back at that time, that was kind of the way it seemed about being vegan. It just seemed like such a stretch. And yet, the more I learned about the morality of it, the less I could fight with it. I think the main thing for me was learning that cows don't give milk. It had never crossed my mind that the only time I ever knew of other mammals giving milk was when they had a baby. Women have a baby, they can nurse the baby. A cat has kittens, can feed the kittens. But I always thought cows, they just make milk. Well, no, they're just like any other mammal. I remember Jay Dinshaw, the co-founder of the American Vegan Society, which interestingly enough was founded in 1960. Amazing that this very insightful couple thought that this country needed a vegan society before John Kennedy was elected president. I mean, is that wild? But Jay used to say, if meat is murder, then milk is surely grand larceny. So I had the information. It took me a while to make it all the way to vegan. And I finally did. My daughter was newly born, and I looked down at her one day, and it's like, how can I not give her the best life I know of, which was vegan? And it was like, okay, you got to stop doing the half and half in the coffee because there's nothing else out there, which at that time there wasn't. You've just got to do this thing. You've just got to take this leap into what you know and what you believe. So that happened for me in 1983, and I really have lived happily ever after in terms of life, adventures, health, and things that I never really expected. Everybody in my family, before they were the age that I am now, was on all kinds of pharmaceuticals for type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and pre-heart disease kind of conditions, the high cholesterol, the high blood pressure, and things like that. And by the grace of God and the wonder of plants, that's not my story. Now, I'm not saying it will never be. I could come back to you 5 years from now and say, you know, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm on Lipitor and, Wellbutrin or something. I don't know. I don't know the future. I just know that so far, so good, and whatever changes in my future, eating in this way is not going to change because it's the right thing, I believe, for my body, for the animals, because they have more to say about this than anybody, and for the planet. And my daughter, interestingly enough, that baby that I looked at in the crib way back when, is a lifelong vegan. She doesn't have as many muscles as this guy, but pretty close, because she is a professional stunt performer and aerialist. So very cool. And on the side, she has her own nonprofit called Urban Utopia, which is New York City's only wildlife rehab for little mammals. So we have a wild bird fund, and when people find squirrels and possums and rabbits, they used to take them there, and the bird fund would reluctantly take them in. Well, now my daughter takes them in. And people would say to me when she was young and growing up, because we did a lot of very alternative things, like she homeschooled, and we were vegan, and we traveled and saw the world and did all these things that a lot of people disapproved of. And they would say, and what do you think it's going to be like when she grows up? Do you think she'll be able to hold down a 9-to-5 job? I I said, I think she'll be able to do whatever she needs to do. And so today she's doing just what you'd think a vegan would do. And she and her husband own their condo in Manhattan. I wish I had done that when I was 35. So that's a little family saga. So this book, Main Street Vegan, came in 2012, and it was kind of magical. Because I'd written, as Evelyn said, a whole bunch of books before, some on veganism, some on spirituality and well-being, and I got on Oprah. I got on Oprah twice, back when that was what you're supposed to do, and that was all very cool. And I remember the kind of month after that I could call any radio station and say, I was on Oprah yesterday, or last week, or last month, and they would say, when do you want to come on? It was wonderful. It was kind of like saying I went to Harvard. Maybe it didn't last quite as long. But I was in the kind of self-help genre more at that time, living vegan, being vegan, but not really writing vegan. And I went to a PETA fundraiser. Now I want to get a sense. I know some people like PETA, some people don't like PETA. So let's just see who likes PETA, who does not like PETA, and who sometimes likes them and sometimes doesn't. That's probably where a lot of people are. They showed videos. I had been seeing these videos for 40 years, but for some reason that particular night my heart was more open than usual, and I wanted to write them a check for $100,000 and just say, here, go fix something, but it would have bounced, and so I had to do something else, and I was going home in the subway and really kind of talking to God. I'm like that. I'm a person who says things like that because that's just kind of how I live my life. And it was basically this internal dialogue of, well, if I can't give PETA $100,000, what can I do? And it was very interesting. It was almost like dictation. This inspiration came. Well, what you can do is make your next book be called Main Street Vegan. And you can make it have 40 little chapters with a recipe after each one, and think as you write about the young woman that you were in Wheaton, Illinois, way back when you were finally able to make the leap. So the next morning I called my literary agent and said, we're changing the book I'm going to write. We need to write this other one. It needs to be called Main Street Vegan. And I could tell that she was rolling her eyes. But she was like, okay. So we did, we got the publisher, it was all great, and the next day the publisher called and said, love the idea, love having this vegan book, but we hate Main Street. But I knew it was the right title, and I couldn't very well say, excuse me, it has to be called this because that's what God told me. So I tried to be a team player and come up with another title, even though I knew that this was what I wanted, because I wanted, there was a time when vegans were all alike, and vegetarians too, and people, we all thought alike, and we all kind of ate alike. Does anybody go back so far that you remember brown and beige vegetarianism? We ate granola, and lentil soup, and lentil burgers, and lentil loaf, and brown bread pudding. It wasn't unhealthy, it was just boring. I can remember when I discovered dark leafy greens. I'd already been vegetarian, 12 years. I went to an Ethiopian restaurant in Los Angeles, and they gave me this fabulous dish called gomen. Anybody know gomen at Ethiopian restaurants? It was all spicy and green and fabulous, and it was just like the world opened up. So I wanted to open up the world to people who maybe didn't wish they had been at Woodstock if they had been alive. I wanted to bring veganism to Main Street. But the publisher was having none of it, and I had a vegan miracle. And I say this to those of you who are already on this path, who already identify vegan, plant-based, vegan-leaning, vegetarian, wherever you are on the spectrum. This is the era when finally, at long last, animals are starting to get their due. So things are happening out in the world that didn't used to happen. And some of them are downright inexplicable. So here's what happened to me. I'm trying to write this book. I'm trying to come up with a name the publisher would like. Can't come up with anything very good. So my husband and I are walking up Broadway on the Upper West Side on a Saturday, and we see somebody so famous you could recognize him from the back. Michael Moore. Now, he had liked one of my previous books, but I didn't want to be like a fangirl. So I just gave my card to this woman who was with him and said, he liked a book I wrote a few years ago, tell him hello. And went on up Broadway, pretending to be a sophisticated native New Yorker, which I'm not. And about 15 seconds later, I hear, Victoria! And it's Michael Moore following me up Broadway. And he says, we need to talk. We need to talk about food. Well, we actually started doing that. He would call me up, we'd talk about food. One night we're talking about food, and I just mentioned this book I'm writing is supposed to be called Main Street Vegan. Publisher doesn't like it. He said, they're wrong, let me talk to them. So we had this three-way call. And it's like, I don't have people with Academy Awards sticking up for me very often. But interestingly enough, he did convince my editor. She was able to convince the higher-ups. And when she called me to say, it's yours, Main Street Vegan, all these ideas started popping. There needs to be a Main Street Vegan radio show. There needs to be a Main Street Vegan film production company. There needs to be Main Street Vegan Academy, training and certifying vegan lifestyle coaches. Well, it's all happened. And the Academy produced this brand new book that we're actually here today to celebrate. It was supposed to be a launch back in January when it was brand new. The Main Street Vegan Academy cookbook is the labor of love of a graduate from my very first class, Jael Fields. Is anybody a follower of Jael Fields? She's great, isn't she? Yeah, if you're interested in air frying or pressure cooking, Jael is your woman. Great blog, Jael Goes Vegan. But in addition to co-authoring with Jael, we called on our graduates for recipes. So the recipes come from 60 amazing people. And these recipes show the gamut of what it is to be vegan in 2018. And some of them are super healthy, like Diana, super healthy. Some of our other graduates, whole food, plant-based, no oil. Some others are from the raw food way of looking at things. And some others are from the, if there's no animal in it, I'm eating it. And we're all in this together. And we're all allowed to see things differently and to change as we go along. As I said, when I started out, I was doing brown veganism. And now I have the rainbow. So it's wonderful that there's so much roominess within the fold, and that's what we're offering in the recipes, and certainly in the attitude of, what are you into? What are you interested in? Why are you here? Your reason is good, and tell us about it. So because I was talking with a friend here in the front row about family, have you ever found that you can convert total strangers? I mean, you sit down by somebody on the bus and the next thing you know, you hear from them that they've gone vegan. It's remarkable. But your brother-in-law? So I wanted to share a little bit about when I met my husband, and then I'll get more practical and we'll talk a little bit about being vegan and eating vegan in the real world. But I had been single for 9 years, and I thought I would be single forever. And I only dated vegetarians and ideally spiritual vegetarians, which meant I dated a lot of very sensitive guys. And I finally thought, it's not like anybody's gonna marry me. I mean, I'm 47. So why don't I just go out with somebody normal? So I met this lovely man through an ad. We just missed internet dating, but he ran an ad. And I mean, he had a real job with health insurance and seemed very safe. And so he'd never met a vegan or vegetarian and was very polite the first couple of weeks. So we would only go to international kinds of restaurants. So we'd go for Italian or Middle Eastern or Chinese or whatever it was where it's easy to eat vegan. And, you know, he did that as well. And then as it started to get a little more serious, we'd been dating 2 weeks, he showed up at my door with a box about this size. So ladies, what do we think? You know, you're dating the guy, it's a couple of weeks, he's got the box. Lingerie! Well, it wasn't. It was a Kansas City Chiefs sweatshirt. Now, we lived in Kansas City, so that part made sense, except it was a sweatshirt that was red, and it had to do with football, and he gave it to me. And I thought, you really want me to put this on and show up? And he said, we are going to go to a sports bar. And I wasn't sure what that was, but I thought it was someplace that had a lot of televisions on different channels, and that turned out to be true. So, trying to be polite, and I opened the menu, and there was nothing. And I thought, well, this is going to be the evening that I have my biannual order of fries with toast. So that's what I ordered. And he ordered great big Kansas City steak, and he did not have the decency to ask for it to be well done. So I was polite, but I was thinking, no. It was a good idea, and it just wasn't a good idea. So the next morning the phone rang, and it was he, and he said, I've been thinking. And I'm thinking, me too, buddy. And he said, I've been thinking I'm not going to eat any more meat. And then he told me that when he was a little boy, he had gone to visit relatives in a rural area, and with his cousins, he had shot a quail. And he said it was the most awful experience to know that because of his action, this life had left the planet, that he promised himself he would never ever again take the life of any being, but he didn't make the connection with the food. And I was just amazed and finally piecing it together, like, okay, that was his swan song to the beef, and he also wanted to test me and make sure I wasn't going to go all PETA on him. And evidently I passed, because that was 21 years ago. A couple of years in, we were at a farm sanctuary benefit, and they showed a little video about a mother cow and the baby calf being separated in the dairy industry. And he leaned over the table and said to me, do you think maybe we could start getting some of that milk like you drink? And I said, oh yeah, sure. But inside I'm going, yeah. And he wasn't 100% completely vegan until he read the manuscript of Main Street Vegan. And I remember he called me from a train. He was out somewhere in, I don't know, Ohio, because the reception wasn't very good. And he was telling me, I am completely vegan. And when he finally got rid of his very last leather thing, this very shy man who never wants his picture taken, he likes to call himself the amazing Google-less man, said, I'm going to let you take my picture with my 2 non-leather wallets, the end of my animal exploitation. So I tell you this story because anybody can change. And it's very exciting when somebody does. And until they do, we get to peacefully coexist. And we get to shine our light, and we need to be happy, and we need to be healthy, and we need to make really good food so that the food that we bring to the potluck or to the office or serve for dinner is going to be just a little bit better than it used to be back when we were cooking dead stuff. So, intro complete. Now I want to find out what you want to know about, although I know what you really want is to eat some of Diana's magnificent food, and we will certainly be moving on to that. So just to know who's here, who identifies as vegan? Like, yeah, I'm a vegan, I'm a super vegan, I'm always, okay, lots and lots. Okay, we're good. It's not bad to preach to the choir, because the choir needs support. We have this terrible recidivism rate. Do you all heard that? That a high percentage of people who start on this path end up not staying. And that's really sad. So we need to support one another. Glad that you all are here. So who is vegetarian? Maybe looking at vegan? Hey, wonderful. I was just telling Evelyn in the car that I am re-meeting and re-embracing my vegetarian heritage, because vegetarian means we're not killing. And I understand that veganism takes it further and takes it to the logical conclusion, but I am a vegetarian. That's important. So welcome to all of you who identify in that way. And who is healthy eating omnivore, looking in this direction? Welcome. Great. Wonderful to see you. And who just eats anything, and your girlfriend said if you came you might get lucky. Okay, there's always one guy always in the back. Welcome, glad you're here. So I love acronyms because they help us remember. And so I want to very quickly, before Diana comes out and regales us with magnificent food, give you a little acronym for the word vegan that might help you on your journey wherever you are with that. So the first word, the first letter in the word vegan, V obviously, is for validate your choices. And what that means is learn enough about this stuff so that you can answer the basic questions and so that you feel confident going forward. So what is the question that you will get every day for the rest of your natural life? Yeah. Yeah, my favorite answer to that is given by Marty Davey, the registered dietitian who teaches our nutrition classes at Main Street Vegan Academy. She says, he who asks the question owns the conversation. So when somebody says, where do you get your protein? How about saying, where do you think I get it? Because if you're upright and doing fine, you must be getting it somewhere. Well, then this makes them think. And they'll say, I don't know, peanut butter? Yeah, because peanuts are a legume. They're a bean. And beans are sources of concentrated protein. And protein is in everything that grows up out of the ground. And if you eat a varied plant diet, you're not going to have to worry about protein. And that is enough, unless they press you. And one of the things I like to say if somebody is really like, yeah, but, I say there is a physician out on the West Coast, Dr. John McDougall. Do we have McDougall fans in here? Wonderful man, he's been around forever. Do you know, the fans I'm going to ask, that in 1984, John McDougall put into a bank account $10,000 for any nutritionist, dietitian, or physician who could come up with a diet based on a variety of plant foods that was deficient in protein or any amino acid. That money is still sitting in the bank. People, that kind of gets to people because we'd all like the money, come on. But actually, unless you're in a starvation situation, unless you're anorexic, unless you are so severe an alcoholic that you're basically drinking all your calories, or unless you are a fruitarian who eats only fruit, no leafy greens, no nuts, just fruit, and some fruits even have more than the 5% of calories from protein that the World Health Organization says we need. And you know how they get that? Because when we're tiny babies, in that first year of life, when we do the most growth, the most brain development, when you would think if you're going to need protein, that's when you need it, mother's milk is about 5% of calories from protein. And so even some fruit is higher than that, but if you only ate fruit, could be iffy. And other than those scenarios, you know what? Protein is not the issue. You do need to get B12. there are some other things that you can talk about with people who are like, well, I'm kind of curious, but, you know, you take your B12. You may want to supplement with an algae-based omega-3 so that your DHA and EPA are fully formed. We can eat flaxseed and hemp seeds and chia seeds and soy, and that all has omega-3 too, but it might be a little bit difficult for the body to use that. So an algae-based omega-3 might be something some people want to take. Those of us up here in the north probably going to need some vitamin D. We can talk to our doctor about that. But basically, the plants are the healers, and the more color and the more variety, the better. So learn what you need to learn, validate your choices by coming to events like this, reading a lot, going online, talking with people, and then you'll be smart and you can go forward. E in the word vegan is to embody a healthy life. Now, what does this mean? I think some people have the idea that if you're going to be vegan and you don't look like somebody off the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, that you're just not quite making the grade, which is patently ridiculous. And it's not necessary. I was looking for a personal trainer at one point. I had a little extra money, and I talked to the manager of the gym, and I said, who do you think I should work with? Because I have to tell you, I mean, I am a health nut, but I've never been a gym rat. And so it was kind of like, all right, I'm going to wander into this frightening world of fitness. And the manager said, I know who you should work with, Heidi. Heidi is great, you'll love her. So I go online and I look up Heidi. And she scared me to death. She had this really short kind of marine-like haircut, and she had on this two-piece leotardy thing, and she had an 8-pack. I didn't know girls could do that. And she looked like she would be so tough and so mean and so not right for me. So I took the laptop into where my husband was working, and I said, look at this woman. That manager thinks I should work with her. And he said, well, if you do, could I watch? But I wrote to Heidi and said, thank you for your interest. I do not think we would be compatible. And she wrote back and said, I'm so sorry. I really wanted to work with you because I'm a vegan. Well, of course, then I liked her better, 8-pack and all, and she did turn out to be really nice. But the long and short of it is, you know, we don't have to be some kind of specimen, but you do want to take care of yourself. So what happens, I think, especially with the animal rights people, who identifies as an animal rights person? Who is out there carrying the signs and writing the letters and having your heart break every time you see another way that people find to be cruel or uncaring to our fellow beings? It's a blessing that we're here, but sometimes it feels like a curse to care that much. Thank God some of us do. But lots of times, if you're an animal rights person, or maybe you're an environmentalist who's an environmentalist who is very concerned that we have a planet 50 years from now. So we're thinking, and we're worrying, and we're working, and we're being active. You know that word activist. It means you're active and trying to make these things different. And that's great. But if you're staying up all night, if you're worrying when you need to be just kind of taking some time off and taking care of yourself, it's going to take its toll. And so to be a continually active activist, you've got to take care of yourself. So we do need to do the thing to take care of our health that we least are comfortable with. So I've already told you, for me, that's exercise. Oh my gosh, if somebody ever invented a way that you could get fit by sitting, reading, watching some really good shows on TV. You know, it used to be we get to say, oh, television is just dreadful, but it's not anymore. And if you're somebody who likes to sit anyway, it's such a good excuse. I mean, it's just right there. And oh my gosh, what about wonderful conversation? Meet me at a coffee shop. We'll have a lovely chai latte with almond milk. and we'll talk about the important issues. Do you notice I haven't gotten up in this whole discussion? So that's the one I need to work on. Maybe it's sleep, maybe it's worry. I don't know what it is for you, but you got to take care of yourself because the animals don't have anybody else. So it's important. Embody a healthy life by making healthy choices. And healthy choices about the food too. You know, there's a whole variety of ways that one can eat as a vegan. Now, when we got into it, we did not have vegan donuts. I mean, if you were a vegan police officer, you just had to tough it out. No donuts. Of course, we didn't really have vegan police officers in that day either. We didn't have vegan ice cream. We didn't have vegan pizza. And we didn't have vegan cheese. There was a recipe, a single recipe for something with the C word in it, the cheese word. And that was cheese dip in a cookbook called The Vegan Kitchen by Freya Dinshaw. And the ingredients were and are chopped celery and raw cashews. And you put them into a blender, and they made a sort of dip thing that sort of, if you had a good imagination, or if you smoked something that you couldn't buy at the 7-Eleven, kind of tasted cheesy. But now, oh my goodness, it's evolved. So it evolved into some commercial cheeses, kind of in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had some cheeses, and they were so bad. I mean, those early vegan cheeses made me miss Velveeta. But now it's different. We have extraordinary, delicious, exquisite vegan cheeses. And some of them are pretty healthy if you read the ingredients. You don't want to have a huge amount of any of them because they're based on nuts, and that's very rich, and so that's something that you're not going to have in such large quantities. Like I always tell people, this is how I eat. This is the salad. I get my salad bowls at a restaurant supply house because that's the only place where you can get big enough bowls to actually get to toss. And these are my cooked vegetables, and these are my fruits, and these are my beans, these are my whole grains, and these are my nuts and seeds. So it's a lovely visual of you get a lot of food, but you don't do a whole lot of nuts and seeds, and the cheeses are based on that. And yet we have choices now. But if all of our choices are the processed stuff, then we're probably going to run into a lot of the troubles that people run into who are omnivores and eat processed stuff. So do what you want to do and be who you are and make the best choices that are there for you today. Because if you learn something new and tomorrow you say, well, you know, this is my best choice today, that's good. It's nobody's business. Don't let anybody online bully you like you're doing it wrong. Believe me, if you're in this room, you are doing it right. And wherever you are on the spectrum today, whoever raised your hand, wherever you are, you're right on time, doing fine to your health. Okay, G in the word vegan. Get to know other vegans because, yeah, okay, we're eccentric, but we're nice and we're well-meaning. And in person, we're really great people. Sometimes online, we don't all seem like that. Have you ever run into an angry Facebook vegan? There may be one or two out there. Yeah, you know what? Everybody's angry on Facebook. In real life, we're cool. And I think it's just so important that we're accepting of one another and accepting of those who have some interest in this interesting way of life. So through Boston Vegetarians, online, in person, meetup groups, whatever it takes, get to know other vegans. Because if you're alone in this, it's easy to let it go. When everybody in your family, everybody in your office thinks your food looks funny, it's hard. And so you get to know us, and they say, oh my gosh, that is the most beautiful mushroom pate I've ever seen. It kind of warms your heart and makes things a little bit easier. A in the word vegan, this is my favorite, and that is add more to your life than you subtract. Because you see what happens is we have this idea that veganism is monastic. and it's all about giving stuff up. And sometimes we encourage that when somebody's interested and we think we're going to get them in, and they say, what's this thing you're doing with your food? And you say, well, a vegan does not eat meat, fowl, fish, eggs, including in baked goods, or dairy products, milk, 2% milk, skim milk, half and half, cream, whipped cream, clotted cream, cheese, cottage cheese, butter. And if you are a true vegan, you also do not consume honey, and you do not wear leather, and you do not wear wool, and you do not wear fur, and you do not wear suede, and you do not use cosmetics tested on animals, and you do not go to the circus or the zoo. He lost you back at butter. So you may be wearing the halo, but if we're really trying to get people over here, it can't just be like, no this, no this, no this, no this. So I think that a great answer to the, what's this thing you do? What's this vegan thing you do? Is to say, oh my gosh, it is the greatest gift that I've been given in my life other than my daughter. I've got to tell you that the feeling that I have that I'm actually living in a way that is benefiting others, even on days that are so busy I can't really do anything positive, the fact that I'm eating is actually saving lives and helping. And I feel so amazing. And I never thought 68 would be like this. That's what's going to get them asking the next question. And not everybody's going to ask the next question. Some people are politely curious, and some people really want to know. So I learned from my mother, who was a really good salesman. I used to say my mom was a crack salesperson, until somebody in one of my audiences said, your mom sold crack? She could sell anything. And she would always tell me, when everybody on earth who knows they need your product has it, then you go after all those people who don't yet think they want it. So I don't try to go after those cold leads for veganism. If somebody says to me, oh my gosh, I'm doing paleo, I absolutely love it, I don't try to crack at that. They're on a mission. They got a thing going on. I just say, good for you. But if somebody says, went to my doctor, he says I either have to change my diet or go on a cholesterol-lowering medication. Well, I'm right there. That's my person. So when you add more to your life than you subtract, you are going to be an attractivist vegan or an attractivist whole food plant-based person. Because if you're on fire with a passion for something wonderful, if you seem more fulfilled than you've ever seen in your life, people are going to pick up on that, and they're going to want what you've got. And even those who don't want it are going to tell other people, you know what she's doing now is the best thing she's ever done. So add wonderful things to your life. Add foods you've never heard of before, and that's going to be Diana's department. I love farmers markets because there are all these vegetables in purple. Who knew? Who knew the plant kingdom liked purple, which is kind of my favorite color. You want to add, if you're interested in clothes, if you're interested in fashion, wonderful vegan brands. One of our instructors at Main Street Vegan Academy, Joshua Katcher, is a menswear designer. He was just written up in Vogue. He was in GQ with Benedict Cumberbatch wearing his clothes. This is fun for people that are interested in that kind of thing. So explore vegan fashion, vegan beauty, vegan home decor. There's just a whole world out there beyond the food, and the food is amazing. And finally, N in the word vegan is never forget the animals. Now you may be here for your health, and that's fabulous. And you may be here for the planet, thank God. We all need that. And there are other reasons. People sometimes are here because of spiritual or religious reasons. I'm involved in a beautiful film. You can pick up the postcards there at the Barnes & Noble table. I've got some up here too. It used to be called the Compassion Project, so that's what's on the card. We've changed the name now to A Prayer for Compassion. And it's to interest people who identify as religious or spiritual in vegan living. So we're just out there trying to get to the various kind of niche groups that think would be low-hanging fruit for this and sometimes are not. So whatever gets you here is the perfect thing that got you here, and it's all just right. And yet, nobody has more invested in what's on your plate than an animal, if an animal is there, or a product that came from an animal that caused suffering and eventual death. We will eat in a lifetime, give or take, 80,000 meals. So what did you have for dinner 2 weeks ago last Thursday? I mean, we don't know, but if there was an animal in that meal, that was all and everything. The more reasons we can have for staying with this, the easier it's going to be and the more fun it's going to be. And there's also an interesting aspect to human nature. As much as we think in some ways everybody's selfish and it's every person for himself, sure, that's true to an extent. But deep down, we are wired to be philanthropic. And a great example of that is what happens when a woman is pregnant. There are women who are alcoholics, who have not been able to string together 9 days of sobriety, but they can sometimes, not all the time, sometimes be sober for 9 months because somebody else has an interest. Women give up smoking and go right back to it, but when somebody else is directly involved, it's easier to do what we need to be doing. Those animals are directly involved. And some people say, yeah, but I'm not like an animal person. That's okay. Somebody told me years ago, I don't love animals, but I hate cruelty. And I think that's something we can all stand together. There is so much in this world that could be worked on. And I'll bet if we went around and asked everybody in this room, what's your passion? We'd have this whole beautiful rainbow of passions, and they're all important. And what's so cool about eating plants and leaving the animals alone is that if you're out there working on peace or literacy or helping the blind or the deaf or abandoned children or whatever it is, the passion in your heart, as you're eating this way, you're also helping the animals and the planet and your own heart. There's no downside. So it's a great celebration. If you're not all the way in this camp today, hopefully being here will help you take one more step. And I can take about maybe 2 questions, and then we're going to get into the fun part, and that is the food. Thank you. Hand in the back. Right. Yeah, that's a great question. Did everybody hear him? There are, thank goodness, lots and lots of medical doctors, alternative health professionals, and allied healthcare workers who are now in our camp. And it did not used to be that way. So there aren't enough of them, but it's growing. So one thing you can do is support the work of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Dr. Neil Barnard's group, based in Washington, D.C., that has been bringing physicians and other healthcare personnel together behind a plant source diet and also getting rid of animal experimentation. And they have not wavered from their goal in all these years, so they're really terrific. Another thing that you can do if this... That's right, so come to that. In Bronx, New York, on October I want to say 6th, the Montefiore Medical Center is going to have its second annual Cardiac Wellness Conference. And this is going to provide continuing education units to healthcare personnel. It's going to be all physicians, and I think maybe they'll have a dietitian or something, but it's pretty much physician-oriented. And there will be physicians there, dietitians there, who are convinced. They've drunk the Kool-Aid or the green juice. And it's a great way to find out who's there. There's also a group called VegDocs, I'm not sure if it's .com or .org, and there's another group called the Plantrition Project. And through both of these, you can find physicians and some other healthcare people who are plant-based and who are enthusiastically plant-based and can help you. I am very happy to report that we have had 3 medical doctors come through Main Street Vegan Academy, which is very interesting because we have 2 doctors on our faculty, and yet most of our instructors are lay people. And so the idea of the physician is, I'm the physician, I know. But these physicians, we've had a gynecologist, a psychiatrist, and a cardiothoracic surgeon, have been willing to learn from people who are not physicians as well as people who are. So there is great hope out there. Now, sometimes I wish I could run into a plant-based doctor who is not a cardiologist, because the heart disease reversal and prevention effects are so well known, and they've been known since 1990 when Dr. Dean Ornish first published his work. So we're getting the cardiologists first, but we're also beginning to get internists and others. It will happen. And those who argue with you, you just find somebody else. You find somebody. A few years ago, I saw a physician in New York City, and she said, I wish I could get all my patients to eat like you. And then she paused for a minute and she said, I wish I could get myself to eat like you. And I think that's the real key, that physicians, like everybody else, are very tied to what they know and what they like. And so it's going to take some time, but we can convert them too. And the healthier we get, this is the E, the embody the healthy choices. If you've had high cholesterol, high blood pressure, whatever it is, and that starts to turn around, your doctor's going to notice. And lots of times they'll say, you know, it's a mystery. That's not the word. What's the medical word? It's idiopathic. It's like, I don't know, you know, you used to have it, now you don't. Well, you say, it's not idiopathic, it is veganopathic. I changed my diet and you're seeing the results. Yes? Sure. Yeah. From the science, soy is good. Soy is actually, it's been shown in the diets of women to actually prevent breast cancer. Some of what you read in the popular press says it's causative. Even women who have had breast cancer, soy in the statistics shows is a good thing. GMO is creepy to me. Now, creepy may not be a scientific term. Personally, for me, I avoid it. Now, some people would say, even if you're eating organic soy because the wind blows, how do you know it's really organic? Well, you know, how do we know anything? You can choose not to eat soy and still be a healthy vegan. There's no law that you have to eat soy. There are people who are allergic to it and don't have it at all. It's not some kind of requirement. And yet, it's a good food. It's a bean. And there's a lot of great stuff in there. And I think the reason that we hear all of these things about soy is because it can be used to make so many foods that replicate animal foods. So if you are this big, powerful industry that is seeing your market share drop, that's certainly happening with dairy. The rise in the non-dairy milk consumption in this country is extraordinary. So of course these people are going to pull out whatever they can to keep us from wanting to go in that direction. There's also a group called the Weston Price Foundation. Is anybody familiar with these folks? They just despise vegetarians for some reason. And my thought is, well, then don't be a vegetarian. But instead, they put out all of this literature. A lot of it's anti-soy, a lot of it's just anti-vegan in all kinds of ways. But it gets cycled into the press, and it looks like reality. It looks like something science-based. So I would say if you feel good eating soy and it works for you, and you have no allergy, and you have no contraindication, then eat it and enjoy it. The best forms would be the whole soy. So we're talking edamame, tempeh, miso. Tofu's a little bit more refined, but it's still in the world of natural foods. I wouldn't do soy protein isolate, protein powders, or anything like that. And certainly organic. Okay, now it's time to eat and watch the food be prepared. So nothing makes me happier than to introduce people to someone who's been through the Main Street Vegan Academy program. I think it must be like being a grandparent. Now, I will probably never have grandchildren. My daughter has told me that unless there is an accident, I will never have grandchildren. But I said, that's all right. I have 319 of them, the people who have been through Main Street Vegan Academy. And one I'm so, so proud of, because she was very accomplished before she ever showed up at the Academy, is Diana Goldman. Beantown Kitchen, a wonderful, wonderful blog, a wonderful, wonderful service that she provides here in the Boston area and beyond. She is completely committed to the health of human beings and the health of this planet and the gentling of the world. Diana Goldman.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Wow, Victoria, that was amazing. Thank you so very much. I have been vegan for 5 years, but if I wasn't, I would be now. So let me just tell you a little bit about myself, and I want to thank Boston Vegetarian Society for bringing me here, and obviously the library for giving us this wonderful space for today. A little bit about myself. So I'm Diana Goldman, and I, as Victoria said, I have a blog called Beantown Kitchen, and I also have a YouTube cooking show called Beantown Kitchen. And I teach cooking classes. I have grant funding from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare Foundation to teach free, healthy, plant-based cooking classes to low-income groups in Boston. And I'm very, very happy to say that one of my students is in the class today, here today. And I also teach cooking classes through health and wellness programs at organizations and companies. And I do it as a lunch and learn. So they're 30 minutes, really quick, fast, plant-based eating classes, which makes me very well prepared to do 3 recipes here today that we're going to do very quickly, and then you're going to have samples of the food. And I want to thank the volunteers who have been working very, very studiously in the kitchen preparing the dishes that you're going to be able to sample. So the goal of what I do really is to debunk myths about plant-based eating and to show people that the diet can be healthy, nutritionally adequate, satisfying, delicious, easy to prepare, and affordable. So that's really the goal of what I'm doing. So hopefully you'll see that today. So I'm gonna be showing you how to make 3 different recipes. Admittedly, one of the recipes is brown vegan food, not lentils, I promise you. We're going to be making some raw brownies, and the main ingredient in those are some dates, and I'll talk to you about dates. That's what's going to make them nice and sweet and moist. And then in the category of rainbow vegan food, I'm going to be making a 1-bowl rice and bean salad and talk to you about sort of what makes that super healthy and delicious. And then finally, a caramel dipping sauce that you'll be able to try with some apples. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is these no-bake brownies here. And they, oops, we're right here, have 3 ingredients in them. So pecans, some dates, which are really a magical ingredient. They're very sweet, high in fiber, and then some cocoa powder. Very, very simple. They come from Victoria and Jael's cookbook, which she mentioned. And when I was asked to do this demonstration, I quick, fast looked through and I said, what recipes are really fast, easy to make, and don't require using a stove or an oven? So that's how I picked these 3 recipes. But I have to tell you, there are so many fast and easy recipes in this cookbook. When you have a cookbook which is designed by people who are so committed to sharing fabulous food with other people, and they want it to be healthy, and they want it to be quick and easy, you're going to come up with a cookbook like this. So I really, really love this cookbook. Okay, so this is pretty simple. To make this, it's just a question of putting in the food processor, and I'm doing this kind of backwards so that you can see it, the pecans, and then I use medjool dates. They're a very sweet and moist variety, so some medjool dates, and then cocoa powder.
What's the amount?
So the amount with those is 1 cup of pecans. Who asked that question? 1 cup of pecans, 1 cup of medjool dates, and then a 1/4 cup of unsweetened cocoa powder. And so if you put your name down on the list, we're going to email you all 3 of these recipes after sometime in the next few days. You should be seeing them. So it's just a question of then, let's see if I can do this backwards, putting it in the food processor and then pulsing it together. So you can go for any texture that you want. You can just keep pulsing it and end up with a crumbly brownie. Or if you want it to be super fun, you can just let it spin until you get a nice big mass. And then you can press it down. So I'm just going to let this keep going and going. And after a while, you'll see you'll get a mass, and that's your brownies that's forming. So these don't have any sugar. And that's that. And you'll have a chance to try them. And this is a super adaptable recipe. So you can use pecans, you could use walnuts if you want to use walnuts. Walnuts would boost the omega-3 fatty acid content. Sometimes I'll throw in some ground flaxseed because why not make them that much more healthy? If you wanted, you could put in some peanut butter. They'll become even that much more fudgy and boost the protein content a little bit. Coconut flakes could go into these too. I also sometimes like to throw in some chocolate chips. So I have some non-dairy chocolate chips, and when you sample them, I put some non-dairy chocolate chips in. So after it's blended or processed into one mass, I just give it another spin. So it's really that easy, and the samples are coming around now. Okay, so
Do you just press it into a form?
yes, good question. So what next? So Helga said, what do we do now? So for this particular recipe, for these quantities, it fits perfectly, I think, into an 8 by 8 inch baking dish. And I would just take this out and put it into the dish. Sometimes I'll double the recipe. When you do one recipe, it's a little bit on the thin side. Sometimes I'll double the recipe and they get to be a little bit thicker. And so you have a variety of options at this point. You could simply use your hands and you could press it down and flatten it. You could use the back of a spoon. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Use the back of the spoon. Or I am one of those people that goes through Home Goods and Marshalls and I see things and I say, I don't need that, but I think it's going to make my life much happier. And this is one of those tools that makes my life happier. It's a pastry roller. So I would just use that to just roll this out nice and flat. Like that.
What brand of chocolate chips do you use?
Oh, good question. So the brand of dairy-free chocolate chips that I use are Guitard. I think they're excellent. They have a really good mouthfeel. They have them at Whole Foods. They have them at Star Market. They have them at Russo's. Roach Brothers has them too. For a while there, I think they've caught on. For a while there at Star Market, they were the best price, and you could buy 2 for 1 price. The prices come up a little bit. I still think Star Market is the best price for them. So I would just roll this out. And if anyone wants to see the bag, I have the chocolate chips so I can show you what that's like. Oops. Guitard, I'll just show you what it looks like. Guitard semi-sweet chocolate chip. Right? Maybe you've seen them. Okay. So, moving on. Yes, you could definitely roll them into a ball. They'd be excellent rolled into a ball, and then maybe you could dip them in some coconut flakes or some cocoa powder. You could add some oatmeal to it. So really, I think it's an excellent base, and then you could just go from there. The point is that you can make a brownie, which is sweet and delicious, without needing to use an egg, right? Without use butter.
The sample we just got, that was 3 ingredients?
Yeah, that was 3 ingredients plus some chocolate chips. Yeah, it was excellent. Good. I'm glad you liked it. Okay, so let's see. The next thing I'm going to show you is this 1 bowl rice and bean salad. And this salad, actually, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about it. So I have a friend that I went to high school with, and she contacted me and she said, I really want to introduce you to another woman who's a friend of mine, because I think you have a lot in common, because both of you are always on Facebook, like going on and on and on and on about veganism. No, she didn't say that. She said, you should meet because you have a lot in common. And it turns out that I did talk to her. She's in Florida, and she also teaches healthy cooking classes, and she also attended Main Street Vegan Academy. And she told me when she teaches cooking classes that one of her favorite dishes to share with other people is this 1 bowl rice and bean salad, and happens to be that she had submitted it into the cookbook, and that's where I was able to find it. So it's an excellent salad. It's super versatile. It has 3 cups of brown rice, and then I already opened up 1 can of black beans, 1 can of red or pink beans, so some kidney beans here, and then 1 can of corn. And just so you see what I used, I saved the cans. So yes, of course, you can soak your own beans and you can pressure cook. You can cook them. I just want to show you that you can also simply open up a can of beans, rinse them, and they're good to go. So this is really fast and easy. So canned corn also is just fine. As far as nutrition is concerned, you really don't lose much, if anything, by using canned or even frozen fruit and vegetables, etc. So just do whatever you find easiest. So here's 3 cups of brown rice, and then I'm adding it to the beans and to the corn. And then to that, I'm adding some red pepper, some red pepper, some red onion, which has been diced small, and then some apple cider vinegar, and some salsa. Again, just used a whatever salsa I could find at Trader Joe's. And then a variety of different spices. So there's some garlic pepper here, some cumin, some salt, and some pepper. So this is all just 1 big bowl. It's all going in. And this is the kind of dish that really not that much effort, but you could double it or triple it, keep it in the fridge, and eat it throughout the week. So I'm putting all of these spices in. And just another tip about things like rice and beans. When I cook brown rice, I'll make a big portion of it and then just make a big amount of it and then just portion it up and keep it in the freezer. And then I'll just defrost the rice and I'll grab it and I'll have, throw it on top of salads or eat it with a curry or whatever it is, just to make life easy so you have healthy food available. And then I'm just going to give this a stir. So different ways that you could eat this salad. Keep it in the fridge, put it over greens so you have a really nice green salad with the rice and beans. You could also roll it into a wrap, or my friend I was telling you about, she does a burrito bar on her classes. So she'll have this rice and bean salad. She'll put out some tacos. She'll put out some kind of cashew cheese, like the new school cashew cheese, not the one Victoria was talking about with the cashews and the celery. And then some cilantro and some tomatoes and some avocado. So I think you got a sample of it. So the sample of it, I think there's some cilantro there, avocado, tomato. So what they did, I made the salad, and then they put little pieces of that on top as sort of a garnish. So that's really simple. Can you see it? This is just a really quick and easy rice and bean salad. So this is really high in iron and protein from the beans. They're an excellent source of protein. As Victoria said, not something we need to worry about. It's really easy to get our protein. It's also really high in phytonutrients and antioxidants and dietary fiber and protein. And just to tell you a little bit more about myself. So I went vegan about 5 years ago. And a little more than 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with melanoma. So I was treated for melanoma, and I'm fine. But because I've had it once, I am at increased risk of developing another melanoma. So I'll talk to my doctors about it and say, what can I do to sort of reduce my risk? And they'll say things like, well, make sure that you do vigilant skin checks, and make sure that you're not in the height of the sun, and always wear your sunscreen, and come in for annual checkups. But never once was diet mentioned as part of the equation. Well, it turns out once I went vegan, and I didn't go vegan for health, but I went vegan after watching a documentary about the animals. But I since learned, and I was very pleasantly surprised, that a vegan diet has all of the components of a cancer risk lowering diet. So it's high in phytonutrients, high in antioxidants, relatively low in fat, high in dietary fiber. And while a vegan diet is not a panacea, it doesn't hurt to just flood my body with all of these healthy plant foods. So that's the salad. And now I'm going to move on to the third recipe. Again, we're using dates. They're a really magical ingredient. So people, sometimes people will say to me, for whatever reason, they've decided they don't want to consume any sugar. Dates are a real magical ingredient. They taste almost like caramel, particularly if you haven't been eating a lot of sugar. So in this caramel dipping sauce, I'm going to put in the dates into a blender, and then this is some vanilla, a little bit of salt, which is really nice to balance a little bit of salt against some sugar. Oops. And then some kind of plant-based milk, unsweetened. So I'm using an unsweetened almond milk here. And then finally, a tablespoon of tahini. Tahini is a sesame paste. So it adds a little bit, again, more flavor and a little bit of a creaminess to the caramel dipping sauce. And then I'm going to simply turn this on and blend it. Make sure it's on low before I start it. So I'm going to let that blend. So it's really that simple. So this caramel sauce is wonderful with, I love it with sliced fruit. So I don't know, you haven't had the sample yet, but it'll be coming around with some sliced apples, and you can try it. It's really nice over desserts, etc. So I used here here it comes.
What is the quantity you put in?
So good question. So I put in 10 medjool dates, a half of cup of plain unsweetened soy or almond milk, 1 tablespoon of tahini, a half teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then a pinch of salt. So as you can see here, I'm using a high-speed blender. This is a Vitamix. And because I do a lot of recipe development, whenever I use a blender, I have a low-speed blender at home for the purpose of being sure or knowing whether the recipe works in a low-speed blender and a high-speed blender. So I do know that this works in a low-speed blender too because I've tested it before, but when I was preparing this for you in bulk and I put too much in here earlier today, I burned out the blender. So I had to pull out my low-speed blender, and I do know that it worked fine. But I just left it for a little while, and I know this also from the past. If I give it about an hour and it cools down, it gets going again, so it was absolutely fine. Yes?
What is this called?
So that's called caramel dipping sauce. Is it good? Did you like the samples? Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad you like them.
Because of concerns about insulin resistance, my area of having a lot of carb and sugar,
Yeah.
and these seem to be high carb and high sugar dishes, so how do you go vegan and avoid that?
So there's actually some research, particularly Dr. Neil Bernard, PCRM, has done some research about the ability of a plant-based diet actually to address and maybe even reverse diabetes. So there's some connection that shows that type 2 diabetes, not necessarily type 1 diabetes, may be associated with oils in our diet, fats in our diet, because we need to be able to pull insulin into our cells. And as our cells get clogged up with fats, the ability for the insulin to get into our cells diminishes. So Dr. Neil Bernard showed some of his research that as oils are cut down in the diet, the ability to actually absorb the insulin or the glucose, to have the glucose come into the cells, increases. So there's a really excellent book that I would recommend looking at. It's called Neil Bernard something diabetes. I want to say Prevent and Reverse Diabetes, Reversing Diabetes, Dr. Neil Bernard is an excellent book. And on the topic of oils and potentially the association with diabetes, this recipe, as it's written in the cookbook, calls for a half a cup of oil. And I was talking to my friend because I know she teaches healthy cooking classes, and she's working with people who want to address obesity and heart disease and diabetes. I said, what do you do about the oil? She says, I just leave the oil out of the recipe and it's just fine. So I did that today. I didn't put the oil in. And like the question is, would the oil have changed the mouthfeel? Yes. Would it have changed the taste? Perhaps yes. But is it a nice salad without it? Yes, I think so. Yes.
I have a question about dates. I was at Whole Foods the other day. I was how expensive they are. Are they seasonal or?
Yeah.
A little bit of dates was like $12.
Yeah, I know. And like the moister, the nicer the date, the more expensive they are. So my way around it, but because I teach a lot of classes and we love dates, we eat a lot of them, is I actually order them from California, from an organic date farm, and they're much more reasonable, and they keep really well in the freezer. So I would recommend, perhaps, if you really enjoy dates, finding a place where you can buy them in bulk, and then they're going to be less expensive. Costco also has medjool dates. BJ's too. Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Victoria, are you in here? Oh, I don't see you. Oh, there you are. So the question is, where is the Main Street Vegan Academy held? So it's actually held, is it still in your apartment in New York City, Victoria?
It is. We're a home-based business because in New York City, everything is about square footage, and we keep the prices down by staying in my home. It's a 6-day, absolutely magical program that happens 5 times a year. We have some openings in November and also all of next year. a wonderful faculty, Fran Costigan, the pastry chef, Joshua Katcher, the fashion designer, Dr. Robert Ostfeld, who's a cardiologist. And we take field trips because some people would say that New York City is Disneyland for vegans. So check us out. It's $19.95, and if you pay in advance, we give you a $250 discount. And it sounds like a lot up front, but after people take the class, every single class, we've had 21 classes now, and there's never been one that somebody hasn't come up to me and saying, you should really charge more. But I know people have to get there and find a place to sleep and things like that. So we do try to stay in the price range of online courses, even though it's a life-changing experience. And then you get to be in this cool fraternity with people like Diana Goldman.
Yeah, I loved it. It was wonderful, definitely. If something you're considering, I would definitely pursue it. It was a fantastic experience, and it's wonderful to meet like-minded people, and I have some very good friends now from having attended the program.
What do you think about rice milk, combining it in one box?
Oh, the rice milk in particular, or just plant-based milks? Plant-based milks. What do I think about plant-based milks? Are they too processed? I drink them all the time, and I like the taste, and I guess I'm not concerned about the processed. My husband happens to be here. Back there, raise your hand, Dan. So he's a little bit of a plant-based milk snob. So he soaks his own almonds, and he makes his own almond milk, and he won't have the almond milk out of the carton. I'm not sure if it's because it's too processed or he just loves the flavor of his almond milk. Maybe throw some dates into it, a little bit of vanilla. I happen to have on my YouTube cooking show channel, I think I have a recipe for making your own almond milk. So, and then, oh, Dan's saying, yeah, and then what do you do with it? He's like, go on. So you make your own almond milk, and then there's the meal that's left behind. And what we really like about making our own almond milk is minimizing waste. So we'll take the almond meal, and with that, we'll make our own granola. So there's also a recipe on my YouTube cooking show, again, Beantown Kitchen, for making that granola. And I think that's one of my most popular ones. People really like that granola making recipe. Sorry. You had your hand up.
What are your recommendations for vegan sources of B12?
Oh, vegan sources of B12. So, I'm not a registered dietitian or a doctor, et cetera, but the doctors that I respect, so many of them, they tend to recommend about 2,500 micrograms per week. And I just take that of a supplement, yes. And I take that in a supplement form. I also do consume nutritional yeast, which is fortified, and probably some other products as well. So I guess I recommend what they recommend, which is supplement or in foods. 2,500 micrograms per week.
If I may add to this question about almond milk, Dr. Michael Greger calls almond milk a yellow food. So he classifies red, green, and yellow. And he classifies almond milk in a slightly processed category, so yellow.
Okay. Dr. Michael Greger, he's the doctor who runs nutritionfacts.org, which is an excellent source for all your questions about plant-based eating, nutrition, medicine, etc. And he wrote a fantastic cookbook called How Not to Die, and a great book. And he has green foods, yellow foods, and red foods, and he classifies almond milk as a yellow food because it's moderately processed.
But that would be not your husband's that he makes himself.
Right.
That would be the kind in the box.
Nutritionfacts.org.
He comes every year.
Yeah,
The Boston Vegetarian Society.
exactly. He comes every year. He's very entertaining, and he says he scours the nutrition research so that we don't have to. Oh, Yeah, so on PBS, and he's in, I think, a bunch of the vegan, plant-based documentaries.
He also periodically speaks at Harvard at the hospitals.
Oh, okay.
So he tries to get what you're talking about, so a lot more people.
In addition to How Not to Die? Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. That's- Thank you. Yeah, we're finished. We're finished.
Wow, that is quick, fast food.
So I wanted to remind everybody that Barnes & Noble are outside. They have the books, and we invite you to come out and speak with them. And Victoria will be signing books in the front of the room. And I think my wonderful number plan went down the drain, so because Barnes & Noble were a little bit late in arriving. So if we could just come up this time.